My name is David Speedy, Director of the Program in U.S. Global Engagement here at the Carnegie Council. The Council provides a forum for vital issues such as the ethics of nuclear disarmament, but we need your help. To guarantee the future of programs such as these, please give generously to the Council's fund drive. Visit carnegiecouncil.org and click on Donate/Join. Thank you.
Let me now quickly turn to what I take to be the illusions of the counter-terrorists, and that is to say ourselves, and I'll speak mostly on this. I mean, to me, one of the great tragedies of the past several years is that we singularly failed to learn the lessons that were widely available to us. We were so convinced that our situation was unique, that there was nothing we could learn from anybody else, whereas in fact, democracies have been countering terrorism for a long time, and governments have been countering terrorism for about 2,000 years. There were many lessons available to us that we chose to ignore. Now, I would say, when I say us, I mean the US here, and in this way, I think we behave just like other democracies. I mean, one of the iron laws of counterterrorism is that governments get better at it over time, but that governments never learn from other people's mistakes. They learn from their own mistakes, never from others. And it was a terrible shame, and many lives have been lost because of our unwillingness to learn from the mistakes of others. We simply repeated them. So the first great mistake, and there was overwhelming evidence to indicate that this was a mistake, is that military force can defeat terrorism. There have certainly been instances in which military force has defeated terrorism, most recently in Sri Lanka with the LTTE, previously Turkey with the PKK. But for the most part, military defeat of terrorism has meant violation of human rights that are complete, on a scale that are entirely incompatible with democratic government. Yes, indeed, Chile, Brazil, Argentina, they all successfully defeated terrorist movements by military force, but only by replacing terrorism from below with terrorism from on high. Now, this is not to say that military force doesn't have a role in countering terrorism. It does. And as you probably can detect from my accent, I spent some time in Ireland and have paid a lot of attention to terrorist movements there. And 30,000 British troops, some of the best and most professionally trained troops in the world, were not able to beat about 400 members of the IRA over a period of 30 years. Now, they did have a role. They could fight the IRA to a stalemate. They could prove to the IRA that they couldn't win militarily. So they could fight them to a stalemate and then allow space for dialogue and political involvement. But the military couldn't defeat the IRA. Interestingly enough, the first people to point this out are the military. In 1976, the general in command of the British forces in Northern Ireland wrote a paper saying, you've got this all wrong. These aren't just a bunch of thugs here. This is actually a political conflict. And as long as our troops are on the ground, we're going to be fighting this, and we can't win it. The IRA, which had pretty good intelligence at the time, actually found a copy of this report and publicised it, much to the embarrassment of the British government and the general, because the politicians didn't want to hear this. They could not believe that this extraordinarily efficient professional army couldn't beat this bunch of thugs, but they couldn't. And we have, painfully, over the past several years, I think, or gradually, the same conclusion is dawning on us, that notwithstanding the fact that we are infinitely more powerful than the terrorists who confront us, we simply cannot beat them militarily, because ultimately they pose a political, not a military threat. I mean, by definition, terrorists are weak. Nobody wants to be a terrorist. If you've got the support, if you've got wide base of support, you're going to launch a guerrilla army. If you've got really wide base of support, you're going to launch a conventional army. By definition, terrorists are people who lack support. So they're small groups, completely outmanned and outgunned by their opponents. So they use extreme tactics to enhance the impact of their action. But military force isn't going to defeat them. Not, at least, if you want to maintain some respect for human rights.